All right, welcome to another Reactor. Happy Thanksgiving to all of my U.S. citizen friends and to anyone else around the world that celebrates it. I hope you had a good Thursday. Um, Today we're going to focus on making an inventory system. It was suggested last stream. I forget who suggested it. Speak up if it was you. We're going to try to make an inventory system today from scratch, and hopefully that's it's fun, and you guys get to learn some things, and maybe I'll learn something along the way. So I looked at inventory samples that are on the Click Store, and I found these two. And so it seems popular to do the whole Diablo style inventory system, so we'll try to emulate that in our UI for our own inventory system. Um, you could do it a billion ways. This is one of those, there's many ways to skin the cat, if you will. So let's create a new app. Let's change our resolution to something a little larger. There we go. 1136 by 640. Yes, please modify the other frame. And then here we go. We got a blank canvas. So let's make some stuff. So one thing we could do is we could, if we wanted to, make it array based, or we could use a list, or you could even use an INI file for your data storage. You'd want to store the data externally so that when you come back to the game, you can reload the inventory that you've collected, especially if you have a ton of inventory items. I thought about it all week what I wanted to do, and I'm still a little torn up. Do you guys have any suggestions? It was known one Jeff that brought up the idea for inventory. So known one Jeff, do you want me to do it as an INI file, as an array, or as a list object? What would you prefer? It's all on you, sir. Let's see if he responds. Let's see what he comes up with. And if you're new to the stream, welcome. We're waiting for known one Jeff to tell us what our external data storage will be. It looks like he just popped up an answer. Hello, Mr. Manis on YouTube. And he wants to go array. Okay, well then obviously the very first object we need is an array object. So let's go ahead and grab an array. Why can't I find it? AR, boom, array object. Excellent. Now, some things to know about the built-in array object. It can be three-dimensional. So far, we'll stick with one dimension, the z dimension being the third dimension. I actually, in one of my games, and I'm going to see if I can pull up, we'll just use an active object. I've used an array heavily before. One of my games called Bit Odyssey, which recently got an excellent review. I'll show it to you. So yeah, here we go. Here's the review. Worst game on Steam, as the title says. If anyone is thinking about buying it, save your $signs. It's complete garbage. And so I told Tim, thank you. I'll work on ungarbaging it. So, woo! Steam. Gotta love Steam. But anyways, one of the things I did in that, and I'm just going to make a quick something to draw in here real quick. Arrays tend to work only in the plus dimensions. So basically what that means is if we were to call it a grid, if you will, right? Just like your Windows, your frames positioning, you start up here at 0, 0 in an array on any slice of the array. So that would be up here in the corner. And I quickly discovered as I was trying to make the array scale automatically, which it will into the positive numbers. And if we see here in our array that we are working with, it's set to 1010, which means in this array down here we have 1010. And just like your frame editor or graphics or pixel positioning, you've got your X and you got your Y. So, pretty much the same stuff. But I wanted to make the universe endless in Bit Odyssey. So one thing I had to learn was how to do three-dimensional arrays. And what the solution was, as you can see here, this would, the array won't push into the negative. I can't say go to array spot -10, -30. It doesn't scale in that direction. So my solution was to use that third dimension, which can be very powerful. And how that worked is, is we kept track in a separate data structure. I believe I put it in an INI, and I'm not going to proportional or stretch. And let's double this up. So, and it's probably doubled up too much, but that's fine. So what I ended up doing is I ended up creating 4 layers. Oh, like this. This layer here would be layer 1. And then layer 2, layer 3, layer 4. And so we kept a master value of the XY position. And if my Y ended up going negative, but the X was still positive, then we used the absolute value of Y, the current Y, but we switched to layer 4 in the array. So I was able to scale positively. So the third dimension can be very important. I hope that makes sense what I just showed you. But for the purposes of this particular demonstration, we could probably get away with just 1 layer of the array. Good joke, Jeff. I need loot boxes in my game. That probably would push it over into the, maybe people coming to my home to hurt me. So no, I'm probably not going to do that. I don't know if it's gambling, but if you're going to pay $60 for a game, just give us the game. Okay, so array. We're going to start with X and Y dimensions 10. Let's just make it bigger, just to start. Now again, it scales automatically. So if I was to call writing to X and Y 2121, it'll automatically create that. But then again, you can't go negative. It's a text array. I am going to keep it a text array because we're going to grab our string parser, my favorite object. If you've watched before, you know this is one of my favorite objects. Because we're going to, in each cell, we're going to put extra data. We're going to include all sorts of information about the objects. So the next thing we need is, let's get a quick backdrop. And let's switch it to motif. We'll edit it. And we'll go with a dark gray. There we go. And then a slightly lighter gray. And then we'll pull it in 2 to 2. And this will end up being where we place our objects for now. And it's supposed to be 10 by 10, so that's 320 by 320. Of course, I made it 20 by 20, but we'll start with that. In fact, we'll just scale down the array. Okay, so this is where we'll place the objects, and we're going to want to make it an even number positioning. So let's see here. Let's say we'll place it 160 by 160. So that means this top corner here should be 160 by 160. Good. Now we need some items. So let's create 3 types of items. Let's create a sword. Let's make a really high quality sword because you guys want high quality, right? So we'll go with a bluish color, blue steel, if you will. And then we'll paint the sword. Okay, fill that bad boy in. Looks like we need to fill in up here a little bit. Good. Then we can make it a slightly darker. I'm going to spend too much time on graphics, but it's fun, you know? I feel like Bob Ross. Great. Then we'll go with a black handle. Maybe it does this to be fancy. And then we go down. Looking good. Okay, there's our sword item. One sword. I'm also going to make the background a darker color. So let's go with that. Maybe even darker. Great. So this will be sword. And if you can have a sword, you gotta need a shield. So now we'll make a shield. Oh, looks like I duplicated instead of cloned. Clone, 3 ways. While I'm making the shield, someone tell me what the third object should be. Someone come up with the third object. Anybody come up with a third object yet? Nobody? Let's see here. Let's check YouTube. Maybe someone came up with... Nope, no suggestions on YouTube yet. So this is your shot to participate. There we go. And then we're going to outline it with black. Maybe a fancy symbol in the middle. Maybe this is the shield of the unibrow warriors. There you go. We got a shield. And then doesn't seem like I have a suggestion for the third item. So we'll come up with something. Maybe we'll make it a potion. There you go. Put a little shading on it. Ooh. Okay. Shade in the opposite direction. Looks like we don't have an even shape here. So we will do this. There you go. And then a lighter green. Dot here. Horrible looking potion, but it'll do. Almost done with our potion. And a potion. Okay, great. So 3 different items. Let's rename them. Shield, potion, and there we go. Now, we should probably make it snap to the grid. So we're going to place these 3 items on the grid just temporarily. And we're going to make a snap to. So let's give all the groups, all the objects here a group to start with. And we're going to call that group. Let's see here. Well, inventory. Well, maybe we should call it inventory item to be more specific. Yes, it's even in a square, right? Inventory item. Now, the reason why we're going to do that is we're going to do clicking on it with the mouse. So I need my ubiquitous local storage value object that I just love to make. There you go. I color it so it appears in the event editor as unique. And the very first thing I'm going to put is a new value that says selected object fixed value. Okay. So let's get to some inventing. If the mouse clicks on an object, and that object being a inventory item, then I'm going to store, let's see here, set selected object fixed value to the fixed value of the object. And you're probably wondering, why am I doing this? But you'll see if I do it right. Okay, then we're going to have another event that says the mouse, repeat while mouse click is pressed left, and if value of object, I'm sorry, if fixed value equals what I stored in here. Hopefully I did that right. There's a lot of distractions going on in the background. There you go. And then if so, we're going to set the X to X mouse, the Y to Y mouse. Let's make sure that works first. All right. Yes, good. Okay, now the reason why I did the fixed value is if I don't do the fixed value, then when they overlap each other on accident, I'd end up picking multiple objects. So let's demonstrate that, how that works. So I'm going to copy these, I'm going to paste them here, and then we'll deactivate these because we'll save those for later. And then we could just say, in fact, we could just remove this one, remove this condition, and we could say if mouse is over an object, and that object being one of these. So this event should work. Oh, I did it wrong. Replace mouse, check for mouse over an object, one of our group. Okay, so let's see if that works. So I can pick one up and I can move it as long as the mouse is really on it. So a better way to do it would be to say user clicks on button, set flag on, replace flag is on, right? And then we'd have to have a negate to turn all the flags off if there's no mouse hold. So that would be here, flag off. So this will work better. So click and I've got good control. Click, I've got good control. I can move them all. But without the fixed value identification, if I end up doing this, I'm going to pick up both. So by isolating each object, every object in Fusion has its own unique fixed value. I'm able to, instead of ending up with a pile of objects like that, using the fixed value method, You can, my kids are talking when I'm trying to focus on you guys. Kids, they're wonderful. You can now avoid having that issue. So there you go. So that's the first thing I wanted to share. Let's see, why use that active object to store values instead of global values? So Jeff's asking, why am I using not using global values? Well, for me, it's really just an organizational issue. I like to create temporary objects on each individual frame for values that need to be not necessarily embedded in other objects that need to be separate, like a global value is, but are disposable, meaning I don't need to transpose that data to the next frame. By doing it that way, I know that any variable I declare at a global level is going to be used globally. So it'd be no different if you were writing a subroutine in scripted language and you declared values just for that subroutine. I'm treating the frame as its own subroutine, and I only declare values at the local level that are only going to be used locally. If I'm going to use values or variables or strings or whatever that are going to be interchangeable between frames that need to be carried over, then that's when I declare them. It's just how I do it. You don't have to do it that way. You could declare values that way, but the problem with it is if you make a complex game, and in fact, I just read in some posts that some people were, finding it difficult to make complex games. Bit Odyssey, actually, I got to get a better one. I need to get, not this one. Let's get rid of that one. I'll just show you real quick. So here we go with Bit Odyssey, last build I was working on. Now the value, using that methodology, only declaring variables that I'm going to use between frames, if I ended up doing it with every piece of data, you can see that globally on this particular game, I've already got 42 variables and I have 26 strings, right, at a global level. So if I declared every non-object embedded variable at the global level, I could end up with hundreds of them. And then you have an organizational issue where you're trying to track what's what and where goes what. So for me, it's just a way to take what can seem like a large issue with Fusion and compartmentalize it so that it's easier to use. I hope that answers the question, Jeff. So let's go hide Bit Odyssey and get back to our editor. Okay, so now we're dragging and dropping things, and it makes sure to pick just whatever the last one is. The way it works, it'll probably pick the top one. And the way it works that way is because there's only one fixed value. When I click on two at the same time, or three at the same time, it's only going to fill in one fixed value. There's only room for one fixed value in that variable. So it automatically isolates one of the same group. Okay, great. Now, do we want to snap that to the grid? We certainly could, and we would do that simply by doing it this way. We could say divided by 32, right? And we put that in brackets. And the reason why 32, because the tiles are 32 by 32 pixels. And then we multiply it by 32. I believe that's how it goes. Let's do that the same way with the other one. So position, oops, edit, sorry. There we go. Snap, divided by 32 times 32. And if I did it right, we've got snap to. Yes. Now, why isn't it snapping exactly to the grid? I believe it's a hotspot issue. The grid is basing itself 32 by 32-bit pixels, but the hotspot, if you will, is in the top corner, 160 by 160, which is right here. These objects have their hotspot in the center. And that's just because that's the way hotspots are placed between backdrops and actives. So I could move the hotspot on my active objects if I wanted to. And for items, it probably doesn't matter. Or I could offset the background 16 by 16 pixels. So I'll just do it this way. Let's see how our snap to works now. So now it snaps into place. So it looks like we're snapping. But of course I can snap anywhere. So maybe that's not something we want to do. Or maybe it is. So the objects appear there. Great. Now we're getting somewhere. Now we're playing with power. So I'm just going to store these bad guys up here. Great. Now, let's write a basic read and write to the array. So we got comment, pick up and move objects or items. Great. Insert a comment. Save data. All right, and we're going to make it very basic to start. Delete. All right. Now, there's 100 ways you could do this. I'm going to try to do it the easiest way. First thing we need to do is declare some internal variables here on our objects. Why aren't you? That's probably because you're not aligned. But anyways, there you go. And then we're going to say item type. And we'll start with item type. So the sword was the first item, we'll make it 0. Shield was second, so we'll make it 1. Potion will be 2. Now, we could create a new object. We'll call it this guy here. And we'll make him hotspot in the corner, just like he's supposed to. And we'll give it just a red dot to start. Wonderful. And we can call this item reader. And we would want him to start on 160 by 160. Make sure it looks right. It does. So now we're going to put him back off screen. And we've got a 10 by 10 grid. So before we load into the array, we're going to test into a list object. And we'll make it keyboard initiated, pressing S, fast loop, start loop, save X, and we'll save Y. 10, and then on loop, save Y. Yep. Then we want to save 10 for X. Okay. There we go. So what's going to happen here is, this needs to be X. And then we'll put Y here. And then that will be our start. So position, we're going to set the position to 160 by 160, which was the first spot for our inventory. We're going to make sure that's before the loop. And then when we save Y, when we save Y, the second loop, that's when we will add position Y plus 32. And then here we're going to position set X to position 32 plus 32. So position X plus 32. Okay, and then we also need to reset this position on the first Y. So position set X, I'm sorry, reset the X. And it needs to be done before we do our X loop. Okay, so what did I just do there? So upon pressing S or instigate our saving, we locate the tile to 160 by 160, which is the starting point of our grid right here. So that's where the first item could potentially be. And then on that same line, we then start the Y save, which brings us down to our first save Y, which we make sure X position is set to 116. The reason we do that is because at the end of executing save X, going off to the right, we keep moving the tile. We need to reset it like a carriage return when we hit save Y the second time. And what this one does is when you've reached the end of your fast loop here, it's then going to bring it down to the next line. So, I mean, the first thing we should probably do is make sure it even is working correctly. So back to our frame and we run it. And if we runs correctly, it should end up right here when it's done. So here we go. And it's off by 1. So you can see that it's been offset by 1. So that means I've done something wrong in my code. Now the easy fix could be to subtract 32, so we can make it 128. I'm sorry, yeah, 128, that's it. 128. I think that's 32 minus, and let's see what we get. Oh. So now it's off. It's on the right y, but its x is off by 1, which means that this needs to go back to 128. Okay, so if we run it, and we're correct. Now, how do we add the items? If overlapping one of these, which we'll put here, and we'll give the fast loop save x, then we're going to add a line, string, and we'll get the value, the item type, and then we could run it. And let's see what we get. We should get 3 items. We should get 3, 1, and 2. 2, 0, and 1. I'm sorry, it's 0 base. So that's correct. Potion was 2, and we're good. And those are the only 3 items we have. So far, so good. We could add additional information. We could say string item name. Here you could say potion. Sword, which this will make sense in a little bit. And shield. And the reason we do that is on the same line where we're adding lines, which we're just doing a list object to demonstrate. We then add a delimiter, and then we can pull the item name. So save, and there you go, potion, sword, shield. Let's see, I got some comments here. Okay, so Jeff's asking about my local storage object. No, I would not set it to global object because it's specifically local value items just for this frame. Now, if I was designing a game where I have 100 different levels and they're all using the same code, yeah, I could do that if I was going to do the 100 frame route. However, you wouldn't want to do that. You'd want to build, like we did in the last stream, a level editor, build 1 frame for your game's level, and load that data in. Just to, again, show you an example. Let's save our work real quick. Desktop, inventory, example, right? And if I was to go back to Bit Odyssey, which is another example, oh, projects, Bit Odyssey, you'll see here that I only have 1 frame for the endless number of ships, decks, and planet surfaces. So if I was to go here, and let's see if I left in the randomization code. I don't know if I did or not. There's a local storage value object. And you can see that I'm storing a bunch of different local data that's just for this frame. And I'm trying to see, okay, right here. So if I, where is that tool? And it's alterable value W. So many objects, so little time. Here it is. Okay, so we'll deactivate this one. If I run it, there's world 1, world 2, and it just goes on and on and on. Different procedurally generated worlds. Now, the reason why there isn't a huge amount of variety is because this also, not all of them are completely random. Like if I said just 1, let's go to set it to 1. So active, and then set the W to 1, then run it. That's random variety colored worlds. And we should probably change the random seed, which I believe is this object. And that's, see, it's set to planet surface seed, so I want to copy that. And then go back to here, drop that in, edit, and we'll just say random 3,000 different seed values. And for some reason it still didn't work. Anyways, you get the drift. Create completely random worlds of different types, but that's all in one frame. So there would be no need in that type of design philosophy to create multiple frames and share that object globally, because I'm only going to really use that particular instance of that object in the one frame. Does that answer the question, Jeff? Hopefully it answers the question. If not, let me know and I will try to explain it some more. Okay, so we now are creating save data, but there's one thing that we aren't doing, and that is calculating its actual, storing its XY position, which let's do it this way. Let's go here, and we can go here. We can say here, and then we can say string, get loop index, name of loop is save X, and forgot the plus sign. I'm going to copy this, drop that in, and save Y. So we want to make sure that we can test for the XY position. And you can see that it's position 1-1 is the potion, position 2-1 is the sword, and position 3-1 is the shield. And the reason why we did that is because we have to make sure this will be the XY position in the grid that we'll be using. So if we were to take the shield and move it down here, we should get a drastically different number. And there it is, 5, 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exactly where it's supposed to be, which is cool. And we can move it. So in our test output in our list object, sorry, just the kids. Label that test. Now we're going to try writing to the array. So we're going to clone this, and instead of writing here, we're going to write it here. So setting. What is it? No, that's the wrong object. Okay, write to a value xy. So the xy being on loop index, that loop index being save x, and then save y, and then what did I do wrong? Y index, I did something wrong. So I'm supposed to write the value first. So let me copy that because I'll need that later. And I wanted to write a string, not a value. So my bad. That's the fun though of doing it this way, is I'm doing it from the hip, which you get to see my mistakes, and maybe you pick something up from them. And I did it again. So we want the object's item type. Oops. Item type plus delimiter plus string value, string item name. Okay. Then it's x and y. So that should write the data into the array right there. Probably help if I name the array as well, which we haven't done. So start a frame, which is here. Did any of you have turkey last night? Do I have any American friends who had turkey last night? And we can save at the end, apparently. It's been a while since I've worked with array. Does anyone have turkey last week? Let's see if there's any comments on YouTube. Not currently. Cool. So now we're writing to the array. And then at the end of that declaration, I could then save the array. File, save array to file, use expression, and I'm just going to say app path string, so wherever my app is, plus example dot arr. All right, so that happens after it conducts all 10 while loops, so that's why it's on this line. So let's run it and see what we get. So I'm going to save. Our test data is loaded. The array should be done looping. And if I go to my desktop, hello, there's our array. So it did work. It created the file at least. Now we got to see if it's writing the data. So next thing we're going to do is all our little objects that we have here, we're going to not create them at start. So there's nothing there. As you can see, there's nothing there. Now we got to write a load routine. So insert, new event, load. Oh, I meant to copy the comment. Load data. And then we'll use the same naming convention, except we'll change it to load. And we're going to have a load x. And then just like y, we're going to load x 10 times. Excellent. Now, here I'm going to create a new global value, which we will call stored array data. I'm going to call it a string. Okay? And just like we did before, we're going to test our theory here. So on load x, we got 10 times, fast loop at the start of frame. We're going to load y 10 times. Excellent. Now, I believe our load and save array is 0 based, so we may have to keep that in mind. Pulling the loop number typically ends up being 0 based, unless it was changed recently, but we'll test that in a second. And so now on load x, we're going to change all triple string stored array data to read string from XY position, and it's going to be fast loop, get loop, load x, copy that, drop it here, y array, and we should have a valid expression, right? Right here. Now, let's output whatever that is. So we're going to add a line, and we're going to pull whatever string we get. So let's see if we get any data. Nothing. So there's certainly something wrong, and I know what that is. I'm reading from the array just fine, but I didn't load the array. See? Debugging. So much fun. So we load array from file, use an expression, app path, string. For those of you who don't know, that locates wherever the executable is on your Windows PC. I believe it works for Mac too. And I believe it was, what did we call the array? Anyone remember? Example.arr. Now, I put it on the start of frame line. It's still not going to work because I would be running my while loop first. So we need to load first. Remember, Fusion works just like any other program. It has a main loop, and when you do it this way, I want to execute the subroutine load Y, which would execute this one, and then iterate through those, and then pause the app, the main loop. And once the sub loop here was done, it would then jump up and load the array. So you got to load the array first. Let's test it and make sure it works. Still no data. Oh, there we go. So we got potion, sword, and then shield, which was kind of what we asked for. Now, it is interesting that we got all of this extra data up on the front here, which means that it read a bunch of blank lines here. So what we're going to do to test that, we're going to pause this by deactivating it. We're going to leave that bad boy there, and just because I don't want to screw this up, we're going to set our grid setup to do 32 by 32, so when I'm using the editor here, they automatically position themselves. And we're going to do tolerances, right? It should be 1010. It should be the last line on our load, and that's going to be our first line. So, oh, I got to make sure those objects are created. Let's start. So we go here, create at start, we run it, and there's the objects. I save it, and you can see that it saved this object and this object. It did not read that object. So we do have an issue with our save routine. And the reason we know that is because I tested using tolerances. I said, well, this should be the very first object, so if we put one there, we should have something. And we know that this is the last object, so it should have something there. Now, we could do that, save, and still nothing popped up, which is interesting. So let's put it here. I'll do it that way. So up here, we run it and save it. We still only have two objects, so it didn't read what's here. Okay, so let's run it. Let's put the object here, save. Still didn't read it. Okay, so we're testing the tolerances, and now it's there. So we know that it's not reading whenever it gets here. Whenever the dot hits here, it's not reading, and the dot isn't, it appeared not to be reading that bottom line either. Let's double check that. Save. It didn't read there either. That's very interesting. So let's look at our array. We check for questions. No questions yet. All right. So I'm going to look at the main list view. And 32, set X position to 128. Okay. So we'll deactivate this briefly, and we're going to do this. Sometimes debugging, you just got to test until you find something. So what I've done here is, if I'm overlapping, I'm going to include the items information. If I'm not overlapping during the loop, it will put the save X and save Y location. Save. So 0, 0, 1, 0, and it goes all the way up to 9. So we're not getting 10. That's interesting. And then we get 9, 9. So it's a 0 based. So what we need to do is +1, +1, +1. Oh, that's wrong. Over here. +1, +1. Okay. And then that should change the output to start at 1, 1. So save, and there we go, 1, 1. And it's saying that the potion is in slot 2, 2, which we know is incorrect. It should be in slot 1, 1. So now we have to go back and look at why it's doing that. Now let's go ahead and make the change here for later, because we know we'll need to do that. Okay. So that means there's something off with our iteration. It is, let's run it one more time. It's not even reading the shield, even though the dot's right on it. So let's do our tolerance test again, save, and it's putting the shield at the very end. That's interesting, isn't it? So when it hit here, it read the shield, even though, all right, I'm going to test some more. I'm going to put it here, run it. And now it's saying it's 10-9. So when it overlapped, this would be considered 10-9. All right. Run it one more time. Save. And they're saying it's 10-10. Very interesting. Okay, so we need to start this loop, I think, 11 times. And let's see what that changes. Oh. Still no shield, but I got that 11th row, so that doesn't help. So we undo that. Yep. Edit. Oh, looks like I manually do it. And then maybe I need to adjust my starting positions again. So let's say save Y. Let's put save Y. Let's change this back to 160. See what we get. Yes, I'm running on instinct right now, trying to figure out what I've done wrong. Okay. Still didn't pick up the shield. What I find odd is it's here. I mean, it obviously is writing these entries, but it didn't read the shield at all. Sword is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the Y is incorrect. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. The potion is 1, 2, so it should be 1, 1. So there is an issue with our Y, which is, well, that's it right there, because no, that's not it. All right, well, I'm going to try something silly, see if it has any effect, if it'll let me. Okay, then we'll deactivate that. Let's see what we get. So now potion is still appearing on line 2. Shield is 5, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's not right. And shield still doesn't appear. So at least I eliminated a line without changing any of my effects. So X. Oh, we got some comments here. So that's a good question, Jeff, and we'll work on that next. That shouldn't be an issue once I get the basics running here. And the way we would do that is we would determine that the object itself still would operate on, so let's say that this is the sword, and let me clone the sword real quick, and let me double it to I don't know, let's just say 128 by 128. Let's just, for giggles, right? Now it's taking up a lot more space. What we would do is we would have that same routine where I'm not allowed to drop this in the square that it's taking up, but I would still write the data for this one square here. So when it's reading, it would pick up this sword for this grid, but as it's reading, it wouldn't allow you to place any other objects on here, so these would read as null. I hope that answers the question. But I will make sure to do that once we've fixed all my other foobarring up. And you said maybe because you set the array to 10 by 10, you're trying it at 11 times now, so it won't show up in the last line. No, that's the thing about the array object, Jeff, is it will scale itself. I'd set it to 10, 10, but if I write to 11, 11, it will write in that slot without an issue. The issue we're having right now, because I'm not even writing to the array right now, I've turned it off until we can figure out why we're writing wrong. There's something wrong with my looping. I'm iterating incorrectly somehow. Maybe it's because I've had too much turkey, and what is it, tryptophan or whatever, tripticablaine or whatever it is, it's turkey that makes you sleepy. Maybe it's knocking me on my butt a little bit. But that's what we have to figure out, is where am I iteration? Am I reading wrong? Once we have that figured out, when we then make the changes to the array line 11, it should work just fine. So I guess back to the lab to figure out what we're doing wrong here. We know that there's an issue with y, the y iteration. And we know that because when we run the save routine as it is, this is reading that it's at spot 1, 1, but it's not adding the potion until you get to line 2. Right? So position 1, 2, which should be here, it's reading that potion. In fact, just to illustrate it, if I move it down here, it should say now 1, 3. So we'll save it, and if we locate 1, 3, you'll now see that it's placing the potion there. So there's an iteration issue with y. And the best way to fix that would be to... I don't see how we want to subtract more from y, but that seems to be the logical answer. I mean, no. We tried 11 times, I didn't solve it. And I'm just for giggles going to see what the effect is of changing it down to 160 for y. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to run the save routine, and boom, put it in the right slot. And boom, shield is picked up. Slot 1, 1, and let's see here. Sword is 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now we're writing the data correctly. Woohoo! So now we can turn on the array, and we'll save that data one more time. And we know that that's good solid data. Okay, by turning the event on, I've rewrote the data to the array object. Now I'm going to turn on the load, and we're going to go ahead and turn these objects off again, remove them from created start, and then if we run it and we say we get 0 sword, and oh, there's 2 potion. Okay, so now we have an iteration issue upstairs. So what we need to do is we're going to need to do this. I'm going to grab this bad boy here, grab that group of expression, go back up to our line here, and we edit here. Okay, and then we change these words to load because that's the proper expression. And we switch it back to remove the +1, but by looking at it, I think I know what the issue is. We run it, and there's the issue. Okay, so it's 0 based, right? And when I'm reading the positions from the data, I'm using the loop index, which is 0 based. So the first iteration, it's saying 0 for x and 0 for y instead of +1. So if we add the +1 here, oh, sorry, that's got to be here. If we say +1 here, and +1 here. And then if I just say +1 here, which this is just output, just text output, but we want to see what we're looking at. This is our way of viewing into the runtime to see what's happening. And there we go. So there's the potion in the right spot, and there's the shield in the right spot. Great success! Now we can draw the objects on the screen. So that's exciting. So I'm going to strip out this bit of data from stored data. Okay. And now on load X, get another load X, insert, compare, alternate string. If it's different than null, right? So there's data there. If it's different than null, then, and let's make sure we're writing nothing but data, which we are. And the reason we say that is if there's no object there, it will create null. It'll write null into the into that cell. Then we're going to go here. We're going to set the source string. The source string being our new stored multiple string. Then we need to set the delimiter, right, to this. If it's delimiter 0 is fine. And then we could just say, I'm not going to do another fast loop. We don't have to. We can just do it this way. Drop that up here. And then if, compare two general values, if value of delimiter, element, value get element 1. If that equals 0, right, then we will create an object. That object being what was 0, I believe that was the sword. And we'll put it off screen so we can pop it in. Good. And then position, we will set the x coordinate to 160 plus 32 times fast loop get index load x, and then close the brackets. We'll copy that for the y. Position, set y, drop it in, change it to load y, and then let's let it rip and see what we get. So that should be 5, 6, but it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, boom. It's exactly where it's supposed to be. So we repeat that process, set it to 1. We know that the shield is 1, so create shield at -32, -32 off screen, right? I'll pop that up here, and then drop that there, change it to that, so that it's now working with the shield. Change this to 2. Oh, nope. Change the second value to 2 in the general comparison. And then we're going to insert, create potion. And just like before, just off screen. Okay. And then we do this. And we're good. Run the game. And exactly the way we saved it is now being loaded. And yeah, so thank you, Jeff, for the input. I think we've got it now. Feeling pretty good about it. So now I think we're almost ready to move on to what would you do with a bigger item. So let's do that. Let's create a bigger item, and we'll get to making that happen. So we got potion in our test output. Everything's loading correctly. Now we can double check it. I could say, well, let's move these items down here, right? And then I'll save it. And then I'll rerun it. And interesting, it created Let's close it and run it. Okay, so it looks like it didn't write a null value. That's what it looks like happened here. And we can check that by looking at our load data, which exactly is what happened. Debugging is fun, isn't it? So what happened is we have a null value. We have all these cells are null in the array, right? But once I wrote to this value, it actually created the data there. And when I tried to rewrite null over it, it didn't take for some reason. So I'm now thinking of how I want to fix that. And I think the best way to do it is to, on our save routine, right? Here we're saving the string when it's overlapping. I'm going to copy, I'm going to negate, and I'm going to change this to a null value. Well, to just an empty space. So a single space. All right. So now I want to put all the objects we have down here, save it, and when we rerun it, hopefully we don't have extra objects. That's interesting. So we get a bunch of swords. And why do we get a bunch of swords? Swords were the first object we created, and they were 0-based, right? And you can see it loaded the data correctly down here. So it's treating that space as a 0 because it's returning data, which is fine. We can work with that. So this line is triggering because we're getting a 0 return. So we could add an additional condition here. Compare two general values. List tokenizing, get number of delimiters greater than 0. Right? And just for conformity's sake, we can put it on all the lines and let's run it and see what we get. Still no dice. So that's interesting. I'm going to now take a look at the array to see what the heck I've done. So there's no extra data, just these spaces. So maybe instead of a space, we try something different. So we're going to start by erasing the current array. Goodbye, array, because it's a nightmare. We run it, right? Nothing loads because there's no array, there's no data. Okay. Then I'm going to create, let's see here. Create objects. And I want to say keyboard, pressing 1, 2, 3, create sword anywhere, create shield anywhere, create potion anywhere. Okay. And then instead of writing a blank if nothing is there, I'm going to write a dash. Let's see what that gives us. All right, so first I'm going to just start by making one object. And then we'll save it. We rerun it, and it's created all these different swords. It's very interesting. So what that means is when it's writing the data, it's treating that null as a 0, even though the number of delimiters should also be 0. Maybe if we say number of elements, because we do have two number of elements. So if we go here, list tokenizing, get number of elements, and we say it's greater than 1. Oh, that's list count. That's not what we wanted. List tokenizing, delimiters, get number of delimiters. There we go. Nope, sorry, number of elements. Oh boy. Oh, I guess that's right then. Okay. So, clone that off. And then let's run it and see what we get. One sword. Okay, great. Okay. Now, which means I could probably go back to writing null here. Let's see if that's the case. And then we run it. One sword, save, run it again, one sword. Okay, now I'm going to create a potion and a shield. I'm going to drop them at the end. I'm going to save it, rerun it. Good. I'm going to move the sword down to the end. I'm going to save it. I'm going to rerun it. And there we go. We fixed the loading bug. Woohoo! All right, let's see if there's any questions so far. No questions. And let's do bigger objects. So maybe we've got a new item. We'll clone the sword. Maybe the new item is a magic pole. Right? So maybe we say height 64. Right? And then we'll do this. Grab brown, because, you know, who doesn't like nice brown poles? Draw that in here. A little too thick. Try to center it as best we can. Go. Still not centered, is it? Well, whatever. And then we'll get a darker color. Splash it, splash it. Wonderful. And then maybe we put some little brown, yellow Julie deals at the top and at the bottom. That was horrible. Try again. Okay. Something silly, right? So now we've got this pole. Now we've got to make sure that its hotspot is the right spot. Let's run it. It's not created at start time, so let's just do that. There's our object, and it does, in fact, snap to the 32 by 32 grid, which is great. So I'm going to take it off, create its start, and we'll make it item 4. Right? And then create sword 2. We'll change that to staff or pole or whatever. And there we go. So if I create a new pole, it appears. We can place it on our inventory. Now, how would we make sure that when we let go of the mouse, that it does not overlap anything? And how we could do that is we could add to our object, all our objects, a new value. And we're going to do that now. I'm going to bring all these guys over here. And that value will be initial x, initial y. Great. Now, repeat while left mouse is clicked is how we snap to. But before we select the objects, we're going to say position, value, set. We're going to set initial x to value its initial x. Right? No, sorry. What am I doing? Position x. Great. Then we do the same thing with y. Position. Set initial y to the y position. Okay. So there we go. Whenever we select an object, we're going to store in its two new values we declared in the object, initial x and initial y, the x and y position of the object. Why are you doing that, Chris? Great question. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say new event, right? And we're going to say mouse, if mouse is no, well, we'll just do it this way. There we go, negate, fixed value. So this would still be the same selected object, and I've released the mouse. And if that is, let's see if we can do an overlap. Overlapping another one of its brethren, right? Then position set x to its originating point. Position Y to its originating point. And let's see if that works. So we got two objects here. I'm going to pick this one, drop it, and it did not snap back. So we have a detection issue, object selection issue that we're going to have to work out, because it is not detecting that that particular object is overlapping. It's probably saying it's overlapping itself. And we can test that by saying add a line, event fired, event line. What line is this? 5 fired. Okay, and then because we're loading, I don't want the test data on load anymore. Great, so did not fire. I get no input that it fired and the object didn't snap back. So how do we do that? We could put it on maybe on each loop. Let's check it out. Is overlapping. Okay, and then we'll put this here, and then we will move this down. Do that. Leave that there. Fast loop. Let's see here. Where is it? It's under count, isn't it? Yeah. For each object. Paste the name of our fast loop. And then I need to remove that and that. Let's see what we get. Oh, so now the event line is consistently firing. That's interesting. Because, all right, that's fine. Because when the mouse is not being clicked, it consistently is going to execute. So there we go. Move it there. Event line 5 fired. And that line fired, but this did not. So I'm going to put this here. Change it to 6. Run it again. Not triggering. So I'm just for giggles, because I'm experimenting. I'm learning as I go. I want to add inventory as a secondary group. And my hope is that the secondary group will not have an object selected. And maybe that will be the trigger. Nope, still didn't work. That's an interesting issue. I don't know how we're going to fix this one. Maybe if we do that. No go. Interesting. This will take a little second to figure out. Let's see if we have any comments. No comments. You guys still with me? Is anybody still here? Should I pick this up next week or should I keep going? I don't know if anyone's around. Okay, I've maybe have a solution. No, I don't know if that's going to work. We got a fixed value that identifies our one object. All right, well, let's do some more debugging. Insert new event, never, add a line, fired. Okay, let's see if this even triggers. So it's firing there. And is it no longer firing? Okay. I wonder if that's all I need to do. Interesting. I put this one. Okay, so this one triggered too. Very interesting. Okay, so we might be onto something here. All right, so start a frame. Actually, no. Yes. When we create the objects, we're going to add this additional bit of code so that we store the initial position at all times. In fact, let's go here. And then same thing with potion. Run it, everything loads correctly, except it didn't. It put it all up here. Interesting. Why did you do that? All right, well, let's delete these. Run it again. Loads correctly. Right. Okay. So then unload loop. All right, so that's our load command. Where are we doing our load? Okay, so here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to here and here. I'm going to pop that up here. Okay. Good. Save. Run it again. I don't know why you're up here, but let's test this. Interesting. Well, we're getting somewhere. Couldn't you use an event to see if it's overlapping something when you drop the item? Yes, that's exactly what we're doing, Jeff. The problem is I'm trying to do it without having to write nested overlaps, testing each object overlapping another object. Because what if we had two different staffs, right? We'd use the staff tile, but maybe we would give one staff a different set of stats, like this is the super magic staff, and this guy over here is just the plain staff. They're both technically the same iteration of an object with different data in them. So I need to be able to test these overlaps for similar objects. Does that make sense? Hence why the group isn't working. So it's an object, it's one of the oldest issues Fusion has. It's the object selection issue. Here's an interesting bug that I should have picked up on. We haven't given that an item type number, which is fine. So that's pretty much the issue there. So we run it and we get this issue now. And that really doesn't make any sense at all. So let's move the potion back down here, save it again, run it again, potion's still back up in the top, weird. So if I take this away, does it fix it? It does, okay. So that doesn't allow me to do initial. So what if on each set initial, why does that not feel right? Well, that's what I'm going to go with. Okay, and then we remove this, and then we take that, leave it there, activate, remove this, flip it up on each here, and then we'll do count for each object. Remove the fired. Okay, does it load fine? Yes. One always gets placed up to here, so now I need to do another debugging console. This time I need a text string. We'll make it white text so we can see it good. Done, see it good. Okay, and then down here, check for mouse over an object. One of these bad boys, and then change alternate string data initial x plus initial y, and then run it. So no initial values. I click. Oh, look at that. Okay. All right. All right. That makes sense. Okay, so we're going to replace this with limit condition. We're going to limit to only happen once. So all the data is up here. That's odd. Okay, so I'm setting initial, not writing the data, which is what I wanted to do. So where did we set it? That's it right there. So let's put that here. And then we run it. And in fact, this is in the wrong place for that. So we remove this. We place this bad boy up here. We make sure it's the first thing that happens. Yeah, we'll leave it right there, actually. And we'll deactivate this line so we know we're not using it. Everything loads. I click. And these still don't get their data. This is so weird. Because again, I'm isolating which object to loop through. Well, so this is easy. This is just nothing more than saying on a line above it, the mouse user clicks, and we just click once, right? So we're going to move that up here. And by moving this off of this line, I now am going to iterate through all of them except instead of the one I was isolating. So let's see if that worked. So it's all 0 across the bottom. Click it. And now we've got data. Great. So let's test it a little bit further. And it didn't snap out. So that could be because we removed that event earlier, which we sure did. So the event that we were using is no longer around. So I believe we said if was overlapping one of these bad boys, all right? Let's activate that. Then we set position set x to its initial x. Position y to y. Run it. No data. Click it once. We've got data in all three. Drag it. It's fine. Drag it on top of another object. Oh, look at that. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? So it worked. And we're getting there. Okay, good. Now, why is it? Because it's happening whenever it overlaps. So now we need to go back here, and we need to negate the mouse click so that I can smoothly and snap back. Boom. Okay, now, why did we do all that? Because if I want to make a bigger object like the pole, all right, I want to be able to place it in here. And when I'm dragging my objects around, I do not want it to end up being overlapped. So we're good. I saved the data. And it says sword because we haven't changed the word to pole. But if I run it, it's not going to work because I don't have a pole event. So let's add that. There you go. Create pole off screen. Drag it up. Remove the potion. And if I run it, didn't work. Why? I don't know. Let's figure it out. Oh, look, it created two poles. That's weird. Well, let's try saving it again. Save. There they are. Run it. Still up in the corner. So, what have we done wrong there? That's good. Do they not have all the, they got all the same groups? Let's check their values. It's the right item. I'm going to put poll here just to make sure that's not the issue. Very interesting why that didn't work. All right, well, let's erase our array. Try it again. So we'll create a poll. Let's just create one poll. Let's drop it here. Let's save it. Let's reboot it. Poll's up in the corner. Fine. We'll create another object. We'll create a sword. We'll drop it. We'll create a shield. We'll drop it, and then we'll save. And then we'll recreate. And the poll's gone now. because it's no longer in the grid, but these objects, I know what the issue is. Okay, easy fix, okay? When I created the poll, and I put it here, it read once, and then it read a second time, right? Not a good thing. So the easy fix for this would be is using a flag. Okay, so we'll say flag is on. I gotta get used to naming flags. It's all new and I haven't done it yet. Insert. Is the flag off? Right? Good. Now what I will do is before I save, I'll make sure that all of the flags are off in our save, because you might move stuff around, want to save it, move stuff around, save it. Now let's see if that fixes it. So shield, let's grab a pole, drop it into our, can I put it here? No. Put it here, and we'll save it. How many poles do we get? One pole. And one pole, oh, two poles, uh-oh. So, didn't read the flag for some reason. Set flag on. Let's run it and see what happens when it loads. Oh, look. It's the right spot. Looks interesting. Oh, maybe let's save it again. Okay, and let's reposition. We still only got one pole. Looks like for some reason I tested incorrectly. But we're good. So does that answer your question, Jeff, about how we'd make different size objects? Please let me know. While you're thinking about if that answers the question, I'll see if anybody on YouTube has any questions. Any questions on the tube? Yes, I think name flags are awesome as well. Okay, you're not sure why it works, so let me try to explain it some further. The first thing we did to assure that we don't end up with objects on top of objects is we wrote that algorithm to prevent objects from overlapping. See, this is you can't overlap, and we achieve that simply. And I'll go to this view with this here. So the very first thing when I click, okay, Jeff, is we do a on each loop to set the initial XY. So it's starting XY. Before any objects are moved, we store in each iteration of the object, regardless of what they are, using the inventory item, its initial X and initial Y by pulling its XY position. So everybody gets their original XY stored. And you can see that happen here because right now there is no data in there. But as soon as I click one, you can see that the data is now stored in our test string, which is right here. Great. And then if, when I let go of the mouse on this line here, and the specific item is overlapping the group inventory group, because all the different items here share the same groups. And it is possible we could probably test it and see if we don't need the secondary group. And we'll do that after I explain it, just to see how it works. If there's an overlap, then it reads what its origin XY was and puts them back to those XY positions. So we will never have a situation where two objects occupy the same place when you're writing data, which is important. Now, how did we prevent? That prevents him taking up space that no one else could, right? Now, how did I write it when it's obviously going to trigger twice on a line? This will trigger 2 times when we do our 32 by 32 bit grid reading. It's going to XY, XY, and then it's going to hit once and then hit twice. We use a flag that time. And the way we did it is when we go to our save routine, whenever I hit save, I blanket set all the flags on all the objects, the item group items, inventory items. We set them all off, and then we start our looping through the grid. And then if we're overlapping an object. I've added, and the flag is off. I add an additional action that turns that flag on. So the first time it hits, all the flags are off, flag on. Okay, is this flag off? Yes, it's off. Write the data, and the flag is on, and set the flag on, so that when I get down to here, it's not going to trigger again, because it's going to say, okay, am I overlapping? Yes. Is this object's flag off? And the answer is obviously now, no, the flag's on, so it'll ignore that and treat it as an empty spot. And because there's no other object there, because we can't snap to, it ends up writing a null space, which is fine, which is exactly what you want. So the fitting the objects into the screen only occurs during the overlap, right? I cannot place this over. So it's going to snap to its place of origin if, in fact, I detect an overlap. And then the writing occurs. This will only be 3 entries. It'll be entry 1, 2, and 3. And then when it loops through here, this flag will be on, so this will set to null and ignore. So Jeff, does that explain it? I hope that explains it a little better. As with all the examples we cook up, I think we'll probably work on inventory example a little more next week. I'll then post it so that you can dive in and pick it apart yourself if you so choose. But before I go for tonight, do you have any more questions on that, or what can I do for you? We're going to check YouTube. No questions on the tube so far. This was the greatest suggestion, Jeff. I had fun doing this one, so thank you for the suggestion. And we'll polish it up a little bit more next week, and then I'll get it released for you guys to pick apart and tell me how bad I am at Fusion. And then we'll work on the next example. Okay, so if you have a big item where one square in the image is completely empty, I think you can put a small item in that slot. So you can put the collision detection to box. That's absolutely correct. You've nailed it. So what he's saying is, if for some reason we had an object that was, filled up these 8 squares, but left the middle square clear with fine detection on, in fact, I could drop the sword in there. He's absolutely correct. And that would be a design decision that you would have to make, as whether or not you want to do it. The downside to that is, let's say you made a scythe, right? And it looked like the pole, but had a knife on it, right? Then you'd want to take up these 3, this L, if you will, or this R, whatever you want to call it, space. But if fine detection isn't on, you wouldn't be able to place it here, because the bounding box would take up all 4 squares instead of the 3. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily do that. Probably the best way would be to avoid having any donut-shaped objects in your game, would be my guess. I can't think of a situation where you'd have to have a donut-shaped object. And if you did, you could, do some tricks like use a ping and have in the center square, you could have a single pixel that would be detected, but color that to pixel or semi-transparent it using alpha channel to make it barely noticeable, like, instead of solid black, which is clear and would no longer detect, make it 001, so that it's just enough to pick, but most human eyes wouldn't pick up on it. I hope that answers the question. That was an excellent question, by the way. Does anyone else have any questions? So I think what we'll do is I'll make a post on the Patreon asking what else you want me to do with the inventory example between now and next week, and then I'll show that off to you next stream and get it posted. I'll hang around for a couple minutes longer and see if anybody has any more suggestions, and then I'll get that post up on our good old Patreon Reactor page. So I appreciate everyone on YouTube watching, everybody on Twitch watching, and if I have anybody on Mixer watching, I should probably check out Mixer. We're streaming to Mixer, but I never check it out. Let's see if I can do it here. Mixer, get the G. Oh, there you go. There's a Click Team 1. Let's see if anybody's watching on Mixer. Survey says 3 people, 4 people on Mixer. So, hello, Mixer. Oh, it wants me to log in. Can't even chat on your, invalid username. How's that possible? Why do you always do this to me? Let's try it this way. Okay. Yeah, no thanks. Hello, Mixer peoples. Any questions? Is it annoying when someone's reading what they're typing? I don't know. I'd probably be annoyed, but I'm easily annoyed. I'm not as cool as you people. You people. It's already offending folks. Let's see here. Okay, so Jeff says, I think it would be nice if the item moves smoothly when you move it, only snapping to the grid when you let go. Okay. Okay, I'm going to write that down. I'm not going to try that in the next 5 minutes, but I'm going to write that one down. That's a good one. So smooth poser. No, smooth moving of item until drop. Good one. And you know what? I think it's complex, but it's probably going to be one of those things where it'll be like 2 lines of code and I'll be done. But that's a great one. So I've added that onto the list for next week. If you are part of the patron, Jeff, please feel free to also make that comment when I post the thread about it. Let's see if anybody from Mixer had any questions, because we haven't given them much attention. 5 people watching. No comments yet. Mixer people, hello. Appreciate you watching. I'll make sure that from streams now on, I'm on here to answer questions. YouTube, no questions on YouTube. Thank you for the 2 people watching. And friends on Twitch. I can't see how many people are watching. I know Jeff's here. Jeff, what's Mixer? Great question. I'll show you. So we're using a tool that allows us to stream to multiple locations. And the Mixer is one of them, and I will give you the link. There you go. But you're on Twitch already, which is, awesome. So why go to Mixer? Okay, so let's see. I think it'd be nice if the item moves. Yeah, we got that. Perhaps with a somewhat transparent image on top, so you can see when it's in a correct location. Drop it. Okay, good. That's another good suggestion. So I could. What you're saying is semi-trans item if spot is no good for dropping. I think is what you're saying. I wrote the note down. And all right. Okay, yeah, so on YouTube, I'm assuming that's Freaky Cold Medina, great name, has asked about equipped items, item stats. Yes, let's write those notes down. We will do that. And that's the reason why we were doing the delimiter on the text, the data information. And so if you take a close look, you'll see that when I'm saving an item, I'm actually writing, item type and item name. And I did that on purpose because we're going to add a bunch of other stats. We could have weapon strength, durability. We could have, does it have magic powers or influence? We could do all the things you might find in something like Diablo, or I've been playing on my iPhone lately. What's the name of the game? I'll just pull it up with my trusty iPhone. Titan Quest. Great game. If you haven't played Titan Quest, give it a shot. It's actually a really good game on iPhone. You can get it on Steam too, but playing a PC game on PC is like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm playing a PC game. But playing it on your iPhone, woohoo, or Android. It's on Android too. So in Titan Quest, a lot like Diablo, you can have 15 helms of whatever, and they're all the same helm type, helm name, but they all have different stats because there's different wear and tear, and maybe one's enchanted or what have you. And we'll make sure to put that in our inventory system that we're building. So yeah, so here's my guy. Pretty cool guy. Anyways, excellent suggestion. Thank you to Funky Cold Medina, if I got it right. Is it funky or is it something else? Correct me if I'm wrong. Let's see if Mixer has any questions. No questions on Mixer. How about Twitch? Hey, Tisnart, what's going on? I'm glad you like it. And we also streamed longer today. I don't know if everybody noticed. I did promise to do longer streams. So we're almost coming up on 2 hours. And I think I'm probably going to stop there. But if everyone likes the 2-hour format, we'll try to keep doing it. We're able to get a lot more done, obviously. So that might be of value. But again, to Cold Medina, yeah, we're going to add more data here, which then when we create the object, we can add those additional stats to it. That way you could have 10 polls that are all the same but have different stats. So if we use the z-value, I mean, it doesn't have to. I haven't experienced any issues with z-value. So the way z-value works is, so in the case of the Bit Odyssey game, and I can try pulling it up maybe. Let's first save our example. We don't want our hour and a half worth of work to go away. So sharing in the in-depth inner workings of my twisted mind on Bit Odyssey. If we go to the randomly generated galaxy exploration screen, right? I've only got the one array object, but I've got 3 dimensions. I believe it ends up being more. And what happens is if I've explored the galaxy like this, so let's say the galaxy is like this. I'm going to draw it on a piece of paper. Hopefully you can see that. So each area represents a quadrant, right? And let's say that I've only explored that much of the first array, okay? Right? But then I decide to go upwards into this quadrant, right? Which would be the 4th or 3rd array layer, right? But this time I go way far out. I increase the x and y of the array, which means that all the other arrays automatically, because they're all the same array, all the different z layers automatically adjust their x and y as well. So it's always going to set itself to the largest xy that you push out to on when going down in z. At least that's my understanding of it. I hope that answers the question. Yeah, so there you go. We did a fusion programming session together, and we involved paper and pen. So, some inventions you just can't get rid of. Hit mixer one more time. Nothing going on there in the reactor. All right, well, guys, I'll stick around for a little bit longer, answer any more questions you have in chat, but I'm going to end the stream today, and I'll get that post up on Patreon for folks to comment on about what we want to add in addition to these things that have been mentioned in the stream for next week's Reactor stream, Fridays. I got to set a time for the 2 hours. I'm thinking 3:30 Pacific Standard Time. If you guys have a better idea, let me know, and we can do a consensus. I appreciate you watching. Again, it's Chris from Click Team. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you later.